Welcome to Joy of the Hang, the podcast where we explore the power of human connection, courageous conversations, and the moments that transform us. I'm your host, Sharon Stevenson, and today's guest is someone who quite literally stands between truth and retaliation. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Francesca Graham began her military career in 1997 as an E1, and through grit, discipline, and sheer determination, she rose through the ranks to become a commissioned military intelligence officer after graduating from West Point in 2004. She's a decorated combat veteran, a senior jump master, and has held elite leadership roles like Chief of Plans for the 18th Airborne Corps, and even aide de camp to the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. But what makes Francesca's story so powerful isn't just what she did in uniform, it's what she chose to do after. Today, Francesca serves as the Chief Operating Officer of the Walk the Talk Foundation, where she's leading major efforts to protect whistleblowers and push for real accountability, including reforming the DoD and Coast Guard Inspector General systems and working to overturn the Ferris Doctrine, a policy that impacts service members in profound ways. She also co-hosts the Star Chamber podcast and publishes the DoD Times newsletter, bringing light to stories that are often too buried. This conversation is about courage, it's about integrity, and it's about the kind of hang where truth gets spoken, even when it costs something. So let's get into it. Welcome, Francesca.
Thank you for having me. It's truly a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you for being here. What an interesting topic we have today. So tell me what originally drew you to the military. Let's start there.
I had no aspirations. We were poor, so I could not afford to go to college. And I was associating with people that I I didn't know, but I knew, that kind of instinct thing that I knew were probably not good for me, but I did not know how to get away from them. And we certainly, my family, like I said, we grew up pretty poor. I did not have the means to get away from them. And the military had always been something that was important in my family, even though my parents were not military, but military history in general was always very important in my family. And so, yeah, joined the military.
Good for you. That's kind of, yeah, my brother was long term. He was retired Navy. So he served 23 years. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, he served for a long time, and my stepfather was Navy as well. So you began your military career as an E1 in 1997. What did that early chapter teach you about power, hierarchy, and who gets hurt?
Uh, Not much, really. uh, I
Not
mean,
not much.
I was 17 years old, 18. What did I know? I didn't know anything. I knew that all I had to do was clean the toilets, clean the showers, mop the floor, and I could go home. And I was being fed. I mean, that's easy. I mean, come on. I didn't know anything about any of that stuff. I just knew I was getting paid, which was cool. I had
Yeah,
food, which was awesome, and, um, I mean, just go
that's
clean the
funny.
toilets. Okay, easy. Give me some Pine Sol, we're good. And then I went and cleaned the toilets. It's easy.
You make it sound so easy, but I have a feeling it wasn't.
No, it
Was it really?
was. Oh, yeah. You just gotta
Okay.
do it was so easy. You just do what you're told to do,
But
and
you
then you go do it, and, and you yeah. Well,
yeah.
at least for me, at that time, for me, it was. I mean, everyone's experiences vary, but, that was my experience at least, and I had a really good platoon sergeant too,
That's
who was good. He was a good guy.
that's good. So tell me about West Point. It's intense. What was
Mhm.
that experience like, and how did it shape you?
West Point it was awesome. Was I went to West Point. I didn't wanna go to West Point, first of all. My father convinced me through somewhat mercurial means to go to West Point, and, uh and later on, I realized the reason I did not want to go is because I was absolutely convinced that I was going to fail. And my father had a lot more confidence. My mom and my dad had a lot more confidence in me than I had in myself. And yeah, and we were homeschooled growing up for the most part. Until I was 16, I went and earned an associate's degree in criminal justice. And so a lot of the basic courses that people take in high school, I had never taken. I never taken psychology, economics, computer science, whatever. I'd never taken any of that nonsense. And so going to West Point was my first exposure to a lot of these new topics, plus the military environment and all of this. But I mean, it
Yeah.
was kind of fun though. There was obviously some very stressful times. Chemistry, very stressful. I hate chemistry. I know it's useful, but
I did go to college, and I still find chemistry very
I mean, I know it's useful. I do. I'm aware. And it's just wonderful. And, a teardrop is just a chemical compound. I get that. But I'm just like,
Yeah.
This is terrible." But, uh
Wow.
but yeah, no, it was but I made some really, really good friends. I learned about physical fitness, which I really did not know about beforehand in any sort of comprehensive or long-term sort of way. Yeah, no, it was pretty fun. Like I said, there were some definite down points, but it's just life. But no, it was overall a very good experience. Overall a very good experience.
Well, you got accepted to go to West Point, which is huge anyway, right? I mean, it's not easy
Well,
to get
that was
into.
kind of a winding road. My
Yeah.
mother applied for me to go to West Point, and the West Point recruiter was just like, "Yeah, she sucks," and said, "Please stop applying because you're not gonna get into West Point, you're too dumb." My SAT scores I've never been a good
Yeah.
I've never been a good standardized test taker. I think I took those darn things 8 times. It was just awful. And, yeah, it was just awful. And, so the only reason I was able to end up going to West Point was, I think it was my mom. Yeah, my mom applied instead to the preparatory school. And because I was already enlisted, I was able to get I did not get a nomination from a elected representative the first go round. They were just like, "Yeah, she's dumb." But I was able to get a commendation, they called it, from my battalion commander to go to the prep school. So I did a year at the West Point Prep at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. And then if you graduated from the prep school, you were brought into the academy on a nomination from the superintendent. Although I did actually get a nomination. Senator Murray, Patty Murray, did actually nominate me, which was kind of awesome.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
it's a little bit of a roundabout way, but I got in. That was good.
See, you weren't so dumb after all.
No, no. But, some people, like, I
Yeah.
just standardized tests are just, I get the sweaty hands, I'm gonna die. It's awful. It's just awful. And you
They
never get
are
away
awful.
from it. I mean, I still remember being a teenager just like, "So awful."
They are awful. I agree with you. You
Mhm.
served in military intelligence, which tends to
Mhm.
require sharp instincts and discernment. What did that world teach you about truth?
Well, that's an interesting question. What did military intelligence teach me about truth? All the intel people are probably chuckling right now if they're watching this. So I think what it taught me about truth, although it was less the military and intel specifically, but more what I was reading. When I started to read, I'm a little bit of an autodidact, if you can't tell.
Love
And
it.
I was starting to read and invest my time in philosophy and history and theology and these types of things. And I think what I learned from that with truth, and this helped me in my intelligence work, is that there is no one truth. It's just like divorce, right? There's three sides to every story: what he said, she said, and then somewhere there's the truth. And that there is no one truth of the human experience, and that it's useful both in the professional sense, intel, and then also just in life, to appreciate and to uh, have an affection for what it means to be human, in the sense that we all are very different, and our truth, how we see the truth of the world or the truth of whatever is in front of us, is very across the board uniquely different in some way from the person standing next to us.
It's true. Yeah, I think that's always interesting. Like there were two witnesses at a crime scene, you'd have two different accounts of what they
Mhm.
saw, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
so true.
if you really wanna nerd out at any point, if you get into how the brain processes information. Well, first, the how the eye takes information in, and then it gets into the brain and all the different centers in the brain, and how they process information, and why, from your unique brain, from your unique input of whatever came in, the light that came in through your eyes and whatnot. It's just utterly fascinating. It's like bottom up, and then top down processing of information, and then that point where those things, two things meet, where your bottom up is kind of your basic instincts and your basic genetics and also their nonsense. And then your top down is all of your experiences that you've had in life and your impressions from what you've read and all this other stuff. And where those two things meet, that is the truth that you make out of the information that has gone into this brain. It's just utterly fascinating.
It is fascinating. I agree. Yeah.
I'm a bit of a nerd.
No, I mean, I think it's fascinating too. I think it's really interesting how it all works and the psychology of it and all of that. It's
Mhm.
fascinating. And everyone's different. So your biology isn't the same as my biology. So yeah, it's very individual. So you've held remarkable leadership roles, including aide de camp to the director of DIA. What did you observe up close about leadership, politics, and accountability?
I have never at the Defense Intelligence Agency, I have never encountered an organization that put so much energy into being mediocre. I mean,
Hmm.
just an unbelievable amount of energy into being mediocre as an organization. There are individuals who work at DIA who are absolutely incredible. There just are. I mean, you're always going to have good people and you're always going to have bad people. But as an organization and moderate people, whatever. But as an organization, the senior leadership at DIA, and this has been my experience from 2012 to 2017 when I was there, and then from 2021 till 2024 when I was there. So a pretty decent span of time and a span of wars and generations and leadership and whatnot. The senior leadership at DIA as a body, there are exceptions of course, but as a body, their focus is on power for themselves and influence for themselves and building kingdoms and maintaining power for themselves, whether that's billets or whether that's money, which is equates to billets in a way, or whether that's, bringing their favorite people onto the team so that they can have their spies in different areas and all this stuff. It is incredibly disheartening to be part of an organization and to reflect on an organization that has such incredible potential and has millions upon millions of taxpayer dollars invested in it that is interested in mediocrity and interested in individual power and the outcome of being interested in individual power instead of being interested in the mission and understanding that you won't always be number one because something else needs to be number one. The outcome of that is mediocrity at best and subversion and sedition and many other things that are counterproductive. And that's an understatement, counterproductive to supporting people and using the resources in a way that supports people to as we say, do good things to bad people, whether that's, you know, killing them or whether that's taking them or whatever the intel mission is or protecting our people, whatever it is, or just gathering information, whatever. It is incredibly disheartening to see that much energy being placed into being mediocre.
So what can be done to change that? Anything?
Absolutely. You can, and yes, you can absolutely change that. You can fire a heck of a lot of people. You can do an honest relook at the budget and the missions across not only DIA, but across the Department of Defense, and we'll say the Coast Guard and the federal government writ large. And you can change the reason for looking across the missions is there's quite a few missions I would surmise. I haven't been part of the community for quite a while, but I would surmise that there are quite a few missions that are only missions or only organizations, not because America needs them, but because the person who's in charge of that organization needs it in order to maintain their billet and in order to maintain their $200,000+ a year paycheck. And so they will fight their bloody brains out to keep that organization, to keep that mission, et cetera. And then you can also, there absolutely needs to be, if there isn't already, I hope there is, but there absolutely needs to be a fundamental change to how our federal civilian workforce is incentivized, rewarded, and disciplined. And what I mean by that is the it is not impossible to fire a federal civilian. The DIA as an example, and I don't know all the stats for across the federal government, but DIA as an example is the vast majority of employees at DIA are federal civilians, and vast minority is military, which is kind of ironic for the Defense Intelligence Agency. But it is not impossible to fire a civilian. It is damn near impossible. I mean, damn, it could take you 3, 4 years to fire a civilian, even one that's literally, like, sitting at home, suspended clearance, all this other stuff. It can still take you 3, 4 years to actually fire that person. And
Mm.
by the time you get to that 3, 4-year point, the likelihood of the manager who was in charge of that person and started this process of still being in that managerial position is kind of low. And so then you got to start all over again. And it's just it's absolutely insane. And so similar
Mm.
to a communist regime, if you cannot fire someone, then why bother? And if you cannot be fired, then why bother?
Right. Yeah, sounds like the system's broken for sure.
And it's been broken for a hot minute. This is not a political statement, even for anybody who's thinking this is Francesca Graham making a political statement. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah. Well,
Broken
so
hot.
at what point did you realize I'm not done serving? I'm just going to serve in a different way?
You're talking the work that I'm doing for the foundation? That was an unexpected, as J.R.R. Tolkien says, an unexpected journey. That was my believing as I say, I believe the lies that I was told, that if I reported misconduct uh, to the correct people, a a fair, transparent, etc. investigation, looking at the facts and whatnot, that would happen. And then also, I had reached a point at that particular job that I was in where the misconduct that I was experiencing was taking an incredible toll on me, a toll more than any other misconduct that I had ever experienced. Because this is not to say in my 26 years, I never experienced misconduct. That's just ridiculous. Of course I had.
Yes.
But it hadn't taken that personal toll. And I always tell people this, being a whistleblower is a very individual, personal thing. It's like, at what point do you become a whistleblower? It's incredibly individual. And I became a whistleblower. I reported misconduct, and I didn't even report it to anyone. I just sent an email to one of my bosses, and it turned into this. It blew up into this thing that I did not expect. I was reprised against, retaliated against. I had 2 investigations launched against me for allegedly using an anti-gay slur against one of my employees. I was put under investigation for a year at least. I was removed from my leadership position. I received career-ending performance evaluation. I was not selected for any of the jobs that I applied for my follow-on assignment. And the pinnacle of the moment was of my, I call it my strategic mental break with the Army, was when I went to the then Army G2, which is the highest military intelligence officer in the Army, the time Lieutenant General Laura Potter, and I was explaining to her all this stuff. And I was like, "Hey, ma'am, I'm not here to have you help Lieutenant Colonel Graham. I'm here because I'm identifying what I think is a system at DIA that is able to abuse your Army intelligence soldiers that are assigned to support DIA, and I think that you should care about this, and I think that something needs to be done about this." Because there's a lot of policy holes that DIA just drove buses through, and these military people at DIA are just, strung out. And her response was 2 things. One, she said to me, if you had spoken to the right people, maybe you would have received the help that you needed, which is insane. I'd spoken to everyone, commanders, EO, IG, whatever. So victim blaming me. And then her second major response was, why do you keep asking these general officers for help? You know they can't help you. And what I was seeking help for was having someone other than the person I made allegations against be the the last vote on my performance evaluation, and they're like, "Oh no, we can't help you. He's gonna keep doing that." I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And anyway, so in all of this, like, 2 or so year period of chaos and a really unfortunate time period, the gentleman who started the foundation, Ryan Swayze, he found out about me. He reached out to me, we spoke, and he really, really helped me to see the truth of what was happening. And he helped me to fight back, to go on the offense, which I just hadn't conceptualized up until that point. And then I made the decision. I'm like, "Oh, I've career's over. Okay, fine. I'm leaving." So I applied to retire. I was approved to retire, thank goodness. And joined the foundation right after that because I believe in the mission. And Ryan lived through something similar to what I lived through, different year, different location, still DIA though. Ryan and I never miss an opportunity to talk about how awesome the foundation is and how terrible DIA is. Those are our two standard, it's two standards. But yeah, so he had lived through this isolation, this ostracization, this moral injury, feeling of loss of something that you believed and trusted and prioritized in your life. And I
Yeah.
had as well. And he realized when he started the foundation in 2022 that there was no organization that existed to help people like us. So he started the foundation, and then I joined, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and just to remind our listeners, we're talking about the Walk the Talk Foundation,
Mm.
right? Okay. So many people see wrongdoing, but very few challenge it. What does it take emotionally and psychologically to be someone who speaks up?
It's very individual. It really, truly is. I did had a presentation couple months ago at a conference, and I talked to this idea of normalization of deviance, which was a term of psychology that came out of the Spatial Challenger disaster, where this succession of small things had been accepted by groups of people, and so that deviance or that misconduct or bad thing, whatever it was normalized. And we do the same thing in every aspect of our lives. If we are walking down the street and we see a piece of trash, how many of us actually bend down and pick up that piece of trash? Most of us, most people will just walk past that and be like, well, that's someone else's job to pick that up, or I don't want to touch it, whatever it is, right? And
Right.
that is in the context of doing the right thing, even when no one's looking, that is a deviant act, right? But it's normalized and it's just like, no big deal, right? And so every person throughout their life, I would say, and also in the military, there are things that are normalized that are not good or not correct, normalized for years or days or months, whatever it is. And at a certain point, a person based on very individual experiences, almost I'll take it back to what I was talking about before, your bottom up processing and then your top down processing, not for everyone, but I would surmise that there's going to come a point where these two things are going to meet and you're going to look at something and be like, you know what? Everyone else is normalizing this. This isn't normal to me. And then you have to make a decision. Do I report or or do I normalize it? And we have to every person has to make these decisions almost every day in their life for whatever it is, right?
Right.
And the decision to not normalize, for me at least, was based on the impact of the environment the deviance that I was experiencing. It had taken me mentally, emotionally, physically to a point of suffering that I just never experienced before,
Yeah.
where I was having eye twitches, I was having, all these like arthritis. I was starting to experience arthritis in all my joints. My cholesterol went through the roof. My hair was falling out and going gray and all this stuff. I was having eczema outbreaks. I mean, just multiple periods, all these things, right? And it's once you get a little bit of space, you're like, oh yeah, it's chronic stress. Nah, that's not good. And
Yeah.
then you get into chronic stress and your cholesterol goes down, even though the doctors tell me it's not linked, but it is absolutely linked in my humble opinion. Anyways, so yeah, my nails are brittle. I actually have nails now. It's crazy. It's the coolest darn thing ever, right? Because my cortisol levels are going down or have gone down a decent amount, right? So yeah,
Mhm.
your bottom up, your top level processing based on your upbringing, your impression of the world, your belief of what's right. Um, is it being triggered so far that you've decided, you know what, I have to say something in order to be able to look at the mirror or to be able to gain some agency back in my life in a space where I feel like I've lost control. I have to
Right.
say something, and then you do. And a lot of people don't, but it's
Yeah.
very individual.
And it sounds like you do it at great risk to career and right?
You
You have to
do.
weigh you really have to weigh that decision, I think, very carefully.
You do. Experiences, as with everything, experiences may differ, right? Like you may make a report misconduct and your leadership may lack the I'm learning a new term in psychology. It's achievement motivation versus fear of failure motivation, where if you have a fear of failure motivation, you can't be questioned, you can't handle criticism, you keep everything secret and close. Because if there's any chink in the armor, then you've failed, and you're terrified of this feeling of failure. And so to have someone come to you and say, "Hey boss, there's something wrong happening inside of your organization." If you have a boss who has this fear of failure achievement model, then yeah, it's a pretty risky situation. But you don't necessarily know what their motivation is, right? Or failure motivation. If you have a boss who or
Right.
bosses or an organization that is what we colloquially call a learning organization, or that it has a achievement model or achievement motivation, then it might get addressed, and they might be like, "You know what? Thanks for fixing that. We appreciate you. We didn't even know."
Yeah. Well, that would be the best outcome.
It would, and I'm confident that there are outcomes like that, but there are enough outcomes that are not like that. Our foundation, we've been in operations since, as I said, Ryan started January 2022 after he retired from the Air Force, and we've helped just shy of 470 people, and we have currently 53 open cases right now, primarily uniformed service members.
Wow. Great work. That's awesome. So, when you defend whistleblowers, what patterns do you see in how institutions treat the truth tellers?
They gaslight the truth tellers, first of all.
That what I, yeah.
And, well, I don't wanna say first of all, it's kinda the DoD would Ryan and I joke, the DoD has a playbook, and Coast Guard, they have a playbook. So, first they attack the truth teller, like with me, within a month and a half of my communicating misconduct, I had 2 investigations launched against me. They create a body of paperwork against that person to show that they are a poor performer, or if, God help us, they were a, mediocre or poor performer beforehand, if they report some sort of misconduct, their report is just completely pushed aside because it's like, "Pff, whatever, you know, you don't have a leg to stand on." You're it's kinda I actually made a video about this yesterday. It's that old argument of, "Well, what was she wearing?"
Yeah.
Obviously. Look at what she was wearing.
Right.
I think I joked that perhaps my next mini episode for podcast will be the title will be I'll sure I get some clicks on it. The title will be "Even Prostitutes Can Be Raped." Which is true, but we don't like to think it's possible. They're like, "Oh, well, they're a prostitute." Like, "No, no, no." Anyways,
Yeah.
tangent. But yeah, so they
Oh,
the truth teller, they ostracize the truth teller, they isolate the truth teller, or at least the person this is their perception of the truth, right? It might not even be the truth, but it's best they
right.
know. They attack, they isolate, they ostracize, and they lie. Just straight up lie. The thing that we hear people have been told over and over again is just trust the process. Trust the
Yeah.
process. It'll be okay. Trust the process. And it's like, nah, bro, don't trust the process. Don't do it. Because
Well,
then what happens is you just get strung along and strung along and strung along, and you get to this point where most of these people, these whistleblowers, they've been in this terrible purgatory for months, years, maybe even, and they have no idea what's going on with their life. They're not getting promoted. They're not able to move, as an example. Their families might be, if they're a reservist or National Guard, they might have been pulled off active duty orders. Families losing medical care, all sorts of crazy things, right? And all of this is done at least from what we see, because what we focus on within this administrative system that by design lacks any sort of transparency. There's no timelines associated with finishing investigations. There's no, unless if they want to, there's no requirement to show you the evidence. There's no, it's not an adversarial system. So you can spend thousands of dollars on a lawyer, but the lawyer doesn't really have any leverage inside of the system because, to your point earlier, the Ferris, you can't sue. Yeah, it's those are kind of the wave tops, and there's a bunch of details in between.
well, as you're talking, it's reminding me of that movie where the famous line is, "You can't handle the truth," right? What movie is that with Tom Cruise
A
and
Few Good Men.
A Few Good Men? Thank you. I'm sitting here racking my brain trying to I
Yeah.
have seen brain sometimes. So, I'm like, "Yeah, does it?" It reminds me of that scene where Tom Cruise is like, really pushing him on what happened. And
Mhm.
he's like, you can't handle the truth, right? It's
Yeah.
similar, right? Yeah, it's crazy. So you've used the phrase star chamber, meaning secrecy, intimidation, and judgment behind closed doors. Why is that concept so important in this work?
Because a because service members, anybody, regardless, but we'll say specifically service members because the military is uniquely designed and able to have this star chamber through these administrative processes. And it goes back to old England, 1800s, whatnot. Look it up. It's really kind of cool, actually. Cool from a terrible perspective. We actually, John Adams actually referenced the star chamber in the creation of our foundational documents of we will not have a star chamber in the United States in our legal system, which is kind of awesome.
Wow.
Anyways, so but we do have a star
Oh,
chamber inside the military called the administrative process. And you said fear, isolation, etc. So those things are particularly important to our work, I would say, and understanding of those things because people who experience those things, anybody, uh, and who are placed in this purgatory of not knowing what's happening with their life, their career, their family, etc. They're unmoored. They are completely unmoored. It is not a coincidence that of the last reported data of active duty service members who committed suicide, it is not a coincidence that 29% of those service members who committed suicide were undergoing some sort of legal or administrative process. That is not a coincidence. You feel
good.
completely unmoored. We as an organization, the military as an organization, culturally, we are supposed to be aggressive. We're supposed to have some level of initiative, some drive. One of my favorite, I think it was Patton, General Patton. Someone came to him and said, "Sir, where did we go? Go forward." I mean, that was all he said. Just go, right? And you take that personality, which has ups and downs, got it. But you take that personality and then you say, I'm just going to put you over here in your corner, in a corner. You're not going to know when this investigation is going to end, whether you're the complainant or you're the subject. You're not going to know when this investigation is going to end. You're not going to be able to see the evidence that's being collected for you or against you. I don't have to give you any information. And oh, by the way, because there is something going on, all of your friends and your peer network, they're scared to talk to you because they don't want the stink to come on them. And then your superiors, who your senior officers, senior enlisted, who used to always have you in their office all the time, giving a report on whatever the nonsense is you got to give a report on, they won't see you by themselves anymore because the lawyer told them not to see you by themselves anymore. Or they might not see you at all because they want to create a distance between you and whatever the thing is that's going on. I mean, even if you can be the most innocent, even the most guilty, who cares, right? I mean, we care, but humans are humans, right? Every human is owed some sort of fair, just, due process. Fifth Amendment crazy thing, kooky thing, as Ryan says. And we take that away. We take that away. We assume where the whole thing, where there's smoke, there's fire. Let's get this cancer out of the organization as quickly as possible. And so that way we continue on with our mission. And meanwhile, that individual, that service member who is investing their life and their career and their family into this organization, the sense of betrayal that that service member has is unreal. And as I said, it is not without coincidence that nearly a third of service members who committed suicide were undergoing these processes.
I had no idea. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Incredibly sad is what it is.
Oh, terrible. And you know what?
Terrible.
The so we've talked back because that's a statistic from the DoD, and we've mentioned that statistic to uh some people in the DoD, senior officers, senior lawyers. And stuff. You know what they always say? Across the
Wow.
board. Well, that's just the pedophiles. Across the board. That's just the pedophiles, and they know they have no option. They know they have no way out, so they just off themselves. And you're like, I'm like,
Wow.
okay, first of all, that data don't walk. It doesn't walk, it don't talk, right? Second of
Right.
all, even if, pedophilia is one of those unforgivable sins, right? Even if this person is actually, as you say, a pedophile. Okay, got it. Our system of law guarantees them due process, regardless. That's the
Yep.
Star Chamber, right? The Star Chamber from old England, your guilt was what mattered. That's all that mattered. Or your alleged guilt is all that mattered, really. And
Yeah.
so ends justify the means, get rid of this person because they're guilty or we're going to allege they're guilty, even if, and then who cares what evidence you give? Doesn't matter. We've already decided you're guilty, right? So it's pretty brutal situation for, like I said, at least a third of service members who commit suicide.
Yeah, that is brutal. So what kind of numbers would that equate to? How many people commit suicide in the, would you say,
You're
military?
asking me to do public math. Remember, I'm not good at standardized
No.
tests. Don't know.
Good at chemistry, you didn't say anything about math.
That's true. That's true. But the SAT is math and English. It's not chemistry. I mean, come on. But
Fair, fair.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can get that data to you after this. But I
Yeah,
don't
I'm
know off the top of my head.
curious. I mean, yeah, because I know obviously it must be a large number, but so anyway, let's go back
It is, and for all the Poindexters out there, it's not the 22 a day, that's the veteran population. I'm talking the active duty population. So don't be like, "You didn't know 22 a day?" Like, "Yeah, I know 22 a day." But no, I'll get the active duty number to you after this.
2 different numbers, yes. So we wanna talk more about the Walk the Talk Foundation. What's the mission, and why is it so urgent right now? I know it's only 3 years old, well, going on 4 years now.
Mhm.
So why now?
The mission is to help service members and federal civilians, but we primarily focus on uniformed service members, fight back against the being targeted after they report misconduct. That is the baseline of the mission, to defend whistleblowers. That's the two words.
Okay.
Why is it important? It is important now. It's been important for the entire existence of our military. Any organization, whether military or otherwise, any organization that punishes people who say when something is going wrong and report when something is going wrong or they think that something is going wrong, that organization is number one on the list of entropy, meaning that they have decided that they prioritize self-destruction over growth. And we'll just use the Space Shuttle Challenger as an example. Why is a lack of fear of reporting misconduct important? Why is systems that are just and transparent and fair and et cetera important for being able to report misconduct? Well, if NASA, if the organizations that were involved in the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster were learning organizations, instead of, if they were achievement motivated instead of fear of failure motivated, the Challenger would not have blown up in front of our eyes. I mean,
Mm,
it just would not have. Those O-rings and all the things, they would have been identified, they would have been corrected, we would have stopped the launch, all the stuff, but we didn't.
mm,
No one, people were too afraid. And it goes back to that normalization of deviance. And now you take that from the perspective of the military. The Germans, World War I, they had the same model of fear of failure as a culture in the organization. Not everyone, of course, but broadly.
right.
And so there were a lot of things that the Germans could have and should have done prior to stepping off in World War I that would have given them from their perspective, a more positive outcome than what the outcome was coming out of World War One. But it didn't, because anybody who reported anything was crushed. Britain, prior to World War One, it was actually what was it? The head of the British Army, I think it was CGIS. I forget what that stands for, but CGIS, the head of the British Army prior to World War One, actually put out a policy that said that officers were not allowed to write any articles or papers or thought pieces or anything that could be perceived as critical of the institution. And so what was an outcome of that? An outcome, one of the many outcomes of that, was that tanks were not brought into the battle until World War I was almost over.
Yeah.
Because anybody who talked about tanks as a useful tactical or operational advantage was kicked out of the military or was put aside for promotion and just kind of stagnated. Or, I mean, it's just the impact to having an organization that has a fear of failure motivation is hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dead, wounded service members in any war across history, no matter who the antagonists were. That is the impact, period.
And to
And
your this is not exclusive to military. You can find this environment in corporations too. I mean,
yep,
it's not everywhere really. I mean, once you
yep,
become a whistleblower or present the fact that there may be issues, you often are perceived as a troublemaker or
mhm,
right? You
yep,
just they want you to go away. Just
yep.
do your job and be quiet, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, and 100%, because humans are human activity is human activity no matter the organization. Where I think that it's particularly appalling within the military is, like, you look at, going back to World War One, I'm reading about World War One in case you probably can't tell. One of the things I'm reading about. Was it third RES? I've never said it correctly. Or Passchendaele. When Haig, Lord General Sir, however they said it, Haig, he sent, I think it was 400,000 400,000 uh, military soldiers to their death. 400,000 casualties.
Yeah.
But it was over 200,000 dead. And you wanna know how most of them died? Now this is some shit right here. Most
Well,
of them died not from the Germans shooting at their asses. Most of them died because Haig decided to ignore the intelligence that if we do all these bombardments and there's all this rain and because of the time of year and all this mud, that it's gonna break the seepage facilities that get the water out of the mud, right? And he was like, nope. So he did all the huge bombardment and then charge and then more charge and then more charge. So you know how most of these people died? These British soldiers died drowning. They drowned in the mud. Hundreds of thousands of British young men drowned in the mud because the organization culturally and Haig personally had this fear of failure model. Like, I'm not going to fail. I'm going to win this battle. Go, go, go. And who, who said stop? Who told him to stop?
right.
I mean, isn't
Wow.
that insane? So why is it important? Yeah, corporations, certainly. Every organization has this, but there's not 200,000 members in corporate America who are drowning in the mud. I mean, that's just awful. Think about that. Think about the yelling, the screaming,
Mm,
the crying. There are so many stories of fellow British soldiers who literally shot their friends in the head because they couldn't get them out of the mud and they'd
wow.
prefer to get shot than get be suffocated by the mud. I mean, that's just crazy, right? So there's impact, right? I mean, it's
Wow.
it's it's bad. And so
Yeah.
it's all of those things why Ryan's so passionate about the work we do. I'm so passionate about the work we do because he and I both have a tremendous, even though we it might not come off this way. He and I both have a tremendous love and affection for our military and our service members. And we're a little bit annoyed that
I can
this is the way the organization exists. You can tell? Side of passion.
it's good, it's good. So, what reforms do you believe you would create read protection?
Yeah, so we have a list of 4, which is kind of our Valhalla or Nirvana, I think is the right word. Our Nirvana is that the Inspector General system, which includes equal opportunity, that the Inspector General system is pulled out of the organizations that it is assigned to assess. It doesn't make sense. Right now, the inspectors general who are supposed to be doing these investigations, whatnot, their boss, the person who writes their performance evaluation, is the same person who they're supposed to be inspecting. That's stupid. That doesn't make sense. And,
Well,
yeah, that's stupid, right? This is conflict of interest, whatever. And, so yeah, so the IG system, the IGs plus the equal opportunity, equal employment opportunity for your civilian workforce, and then your command appointed investigating officers, those should be pulled out fully from the organizations that they're supposed to inspect. That they're assigned to inspect. Whether that means coming entirely out of the DoD and the Coast Guard, or whether that means joint level investigations, all that stuff. Those are all things that we've talked about and we continue to talk about. Another that's our nirvana. Low hanging fruit and something that we are working right now with some of our congressional staffs is uh, having mandatory training and uniform training for all personnel that are assigned to conduct an investigation, as an example, and adequate training as well. So, as an example, Ryan, when he was still in the Air Force, he served as an inspector general, and he received, I think it was about 3.5, 4 days of training. And at that point, he becomes the most qualified person on that base as to do these inspections, which are very important inspections, right? Remember the mud, 200,000 people in the mud, drowning, screeching, about to get suffocated. That's just bullshit right there, right? Anyways, um, so, uh, so he became the most qualified person. We just think that's kind of crazy, right? Like, you can't learn how to do everything you're supposed to do in
With your
3.5 days.
phone.
Alternatively, you also have people like myself, who I never served as an inspector general, but I was what's called a command appointed investigating officer, or IO, and I received zero training to do investigations. I did receive training on whatever the topic was, right? Like equal opportunity or property, whatever it is, right? But how to actually do an investigation, how to interview the correct people, how to ask the right questions, how to sort evidence, how to try to get rid of some of your own bias, all of these things, zero training whatsoever. And that's where I would say, hazard to guess, over 80% of all investigations in the military occur is at the zero training command appointed investigating officer level. And there's approximately about 30 or so thousand investigations that occur, administrative investigations that occur across the military every year. About that's a lot of people, a lot of investigations. And so that's our low hanging fruit, is we're proposing legislation to have some sort of uniform, adequate, and mandatory training for anybody who's assigned to conduct an investigation. Another thing that we think needs to happen is there needs to be some sort of mandatory timelines associated with an investigation, because otherwise you can have an investigation going on for a year, you can have an investigation for 3 years, whatever it is. And there's different reasons why. Some people will say, oh well, we have, this investigation going on this long because it just took that long. Well, that's just not true. A lot of times the investigations are held for that long because they're waiting for the politically appropriate time to release it, or they're wanting to make sure that whoever was under investigation, even if the investigation was unsubstantiated or the allegations was unsubstantiated, they want to make sure that essentially they don't have a career. So they leave them under this flag for a long time, right? So there should be
Yeah.
some sort of mandatory timelines associated with investigations. And then there should also be something, that I should say, a way to address the normalization of deviance that is so apparent within our services. Those are just some basic things.
Yeah.
There are a lot of other stuff, but those
You've got your work cut
be
out for you.
yeah, basic ones. Well, and then also, actually, I'll throw this one out there too. We do believe that service members should have access to all the branches of government. Right now, we have go back to our civics. We have the judicial branch, the legislative branch, and the executive branch. Well, the DoD, Coast Guard, et cetera, they sit inside the executive branch. Congress is legislative branch. Because of the Ferris Doctrine, which is a 1950 Supreme Court case, there was a decision made, and the legislative branch has upheld it, that service members cannot sue. So essentially, they do not have access to the judicial branch of the government for anything that is categorized as incident to service. And what we've seen since 1950 is that the definition of incident to service has taken on some quite unfortunate definitions, up to and including the Department of Justice that was representing a four-star general who was allegedly sexually assaulted one of his subordinates, argued that, if I recall, I have to go back and double check the exact data, but broadly argued that sexual assault is incident to service. Therefore, the service member or the person who is suing does not have, essentially, the judicial branch does not have jurisdiction to take the case. Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy?
I know. I feel like I need to take a pause right there.
I'm telling you. I'm telling you, that's cray cray, right?
It's cray cray. Like, I feel like I need to take a deep breath right there.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know.
yeah. Yeah. Whoa, she can't
Yeah.
sue. And so this is General Height and Colonel Spetzler. So do you know the only reason so it was the Ninth Circuit Court out in California, and the Ninth Circuit Court, when the DOJ or whoever was arguing that, no, 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 she can't sue, this is incident to service, right? they decided that no, no, we do have discovery. We do not think that sexual assault is incident to service. And so we are going to take the next. So they established jurisdiction, right, which is one of the first big steps in this whole legal process.
Yeah.
So they established the jurisdiction, and now we get to the discovery stage. And but what's kind of interesting was the only reason that, or one of the key compelling arguments for why the Ninth Circuit Court made that decision was because the alleged sexual assault did not happen on base. It happened off base at a hotel that General Hyten and the colonel who worked for him, they were at this hotel off base at a conference somewhere, wherever in the world, right? And the alleged sexual assault occurred there, right? But think about that though. And that was the
I
argument, right? Like her lawyers really had to make a strong argument that this occurred in the civilian world, right? But
yeah,
if it had happened on
uh,
base,
I know where you're going. Yes. I know
who
where you're going.
knows?
I know.
Isn't that
I have a
crazy?
question for this, just so our listeners can catch up. So the Ferris doctrine is what enabled all of this to kind of this evidence to be kind of squashed. So why do you think the Ferris doctrine passed in the first place in 1950? Was there something that happened? I don't know. I'm not as familiar with the case. So
Mhm.
maybe you could educate me if you're familiar with it.
Yeah, I actually wrote a paper about it several months ago. So my theory on why the Ferris Doctrine passed at that time. So the Ferris Doctrine came into effect, I think it was January or February 1950. Excuse me, I'm sorry, December 1950. January or February 1951, uh, U.S. forces commenced hostilities in Korea. The Korean War kicked off. In that 1950 era, communism and the Cold War was hot. I mean, it was not a Cold War, it was a hot war, hence, the
Yeah.
Korean War, right? So, my theory is that there was an incredible confluence of events that and culture in America of not complaining, basically not being a complainer and also not doing anything that can question or would question the sanctity of this great organization that just won World War II and is now fighting the Cold War. And oh, by the way, 2 months later, I think it's a month and a half, 2 months later, is now fighting the communists in North Korea or in Korea and
Yeah.
or North Korean communists and eventually the Chinese. And so you think about all of these things going on at that time, the US government, which includes the Supreme Court, I mean, the Supreme Court is theoretically apolitical, but they're still people, right? They're still part of this thing called the polis, Greek word meaning the city, the root of the word political. So they're still part of this world that we live in, this country that we live in. And the thought of opening up lawsuits to people who are theoretically or who are, charged at Hill is just, and especially in that time period, we're in a very conformist, very scared, still kind of off this high of World War II. Communism is coming, the Red Scare, all these things, right? And so it
Right.
just doesn't make sense to, I think, it doesn't make sense to allow these people who are supposed to charge that hill to all of a sudden be making lawsuits. Now, to the
Mhm.
somewhat to the credit of the Ferris Doctrine, it does not make sense from a military operational perspective to have commanders, squad leaders, platoon sergeants, whoever, who really are in a fight, having every single question or decision questioned by lawsuits. That does not make sense. We would never argue for that. We do think it makes sense to uh, not try to say then sexual assault is incident to service, therefore we're not going to let you sue. Or medical malpractice. You have proven cases of the military investigating itself. Yes, there was medical malpractice. Those terms are actually used, and the service member cannot sue. In the same way, I mean, if
Yeah.
there's lots of stuff that's been written about this, but a person who's in a federal penitentiary, prisoner, could be serving life in prison for whatever awful thing. They have more rights in the American judicial system than a military member. They can actually sue. We can't.
Interesting.
So there's a lot. There was recently the closest that Ferris Doctrine came up for reconsideration was I think it was fall of 2024, I think. the Staff Sergeant Ryan Carter case, and we actually were part of an amicus brief for that, which is kind of cool. And it was medical malpractice. And Justice Thomas, the court decided not to hear the case. They decided they did not have jurisdiction because him being paralyzed from his shoulders down when he went in for what should have been a routine surgery is incident to service apparently. But Justice Thomas wrote a scathing dissent of that of the Supreme Court's decision not to hear the case. And
Oh,
I'm hopeful that that dissent will lay the groundwork for quite a few other cases to go up to the court.
that would be great. So, do you think, or do you know, are there more men or women who tend to be whistleblowers, or is it pretty even across the board?
I don't know.
Don't know.
I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
wonder.
And
Yeah.
that would be a hard question for me to answer anyways, just because um the ratio of men to
Well,
women is
good point. Yeah, there aren't as many women serving, right, in the military.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. A ratio.
I mean, I could
Uh,
figure it out, but I don't know all the numbers. I just don't know.
right. No, that's fine. Do you was it difficult, did you think? I mean, you entered in 2004. I mean, the military was pretty good at accepting females at that time, right? How many were in your class? No, not so much. Is it still
We
tough?
we
Hard?
had 13% of my West Point class was
Oh,
women.
pretty
Yeah,
low.
13%. I think it was 13%, something like that. Yeah, the numbers kind of move around
West
quite a
Point
bit,
was
but I
all
think
male at one time, wasn't it? Was West Point
it
all male at
was,
one?
yeah, all of the first class of women to enter West Point was 1976, so they graduated in 1980.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the military is not I would say the military writ large is not there's a lot of sacrifices that every person in the military has to make, men and women, and the sacrifices that women have to make, I don't want to say they're more or harder. I've never liked setting men and women off against each other. It's just never been something that I've agreed with because everyone's different, and I don't like these broad generalizations we make with men and women specifically. I will make them about DIA for the most part, but uh, but yeah, no, it women. It is there are some very definite challenges that women face in the military that are unique to being a woman, and it's one of those things where that individual has to make a decision of is do these things matter to me, and or does the mission important enough to me that I'm going to have these things matter not quite so much. Because I've been sexually harassed every single unit I've been in. I've been sexually assaulted once. I mean, I get it. I know. Um, I, but my decision consistently was that the mission of the military, and for me, the Army specifically, that I really truly valued it. And I thought that even though I was dealing with some nonsense across the board, West Point, enlisted, commission, whatnot, I was dealing with some nonsense that was more unique to women than to men. Not that men aren't sexually harassed and raped and all sorts of they are, but more unique statistically to women than to men. I just felt, and I made the decision that the mission of the military and the army was very, very important to me, and so I decided to keep moving forward.
You are a brave lady. Again, it's probably more apt to happen maybe in a military environment, but those women have those risks no matter where they are to some extent, unfortunately.
It's true in the military because of the thing that we're supposed to do, we're supposed to like we're essentially the brawlers. And I mean, someone's gotta brawl because someone's
Yeah.
gonna brawl against us, right? So you need someone who wants to go freaking thinks it's cool to get into a bar fight on the weekends. I don't, but some people do. But you just didn't,
Francesca, I have a question on the tip of my tongue, but I'm holding it back and I'm going to ask you off air because I don't want to get into a military, because there's a bunch of stuff brewing right now in politics that I really want to talk about,
"Oh,
but
no,
I'm
you
not.
can ask me. Ask away. Go
Yeah,
ahead. I don't mind."
I just don't want to I feel, well, the big one right now, I guess it's been in the media a lot is whether or not women should be in combat.
Mhm.
And let's face it, Pete Hegseth is kind of anti women in combat unless they can physically handle it, I guess. So, what's your view about women in combat? Do you
I
think,
think Go ahead.
no, do you think if they're physically able, or do you think they should be able to no matter what? Or if they really are earn their way there, do you think they should be there?
Absolutely. Why the hell not?
Yeah.
If they can do it, why the hell not? And
Yeah.
there and the fact of the matter is there's a lot of women, and we don't like saying this, there's a lot of men who can't freaking cut it. I can't cut it.
Yeah.
I am a horrific road marcher. You put nonsense on my back and I'm just like, "Ugh, the world is ending." Right? I mean, everyone has a limitation, right? Whatever. Or many
Right.
some people have more than one or two limitations, right? But there are some women who can do it, who are more than physically capable of doing it, more than mentally capable, emotionally capable. And there's some women that are not. There are some men that can do it, and there's some men that are not. And we
Well
don't,
said.
we don't like to talk about, how many men fail out.
Right.
There's
Well
a lot
said.
do. A lot of
Yeah.
them do, right?
Yeah.
And I
Right.
wouldn't be surprised if I would not be surprised, this is a guess, but I would not be surprised if we balance out the data based on ratios or whatever, and we look and we assume, as we should, that say ranger school, right? And we assume that the people arriving to ranger school, men or women, have worked hard to achieve some level of fitness that's greater than their probably normal level, right? Because they're about to go into some shit. So and then you normalize for ratio wise. I would not be surprised if the number of men who fail out is ratio wise, percentage ratio normalized, the same as the number of women who fail out. Like it's
Oh,
a
yeah.
hard freaking school, right? It just
Yeah.
is. And then also if you actually, so the Marine Corps, they're funky little shits. You know what they did? So they have, their infantry basic school. And every Marine goes through infantry basic, or whatever that's called, right?
Yeah.
And what they did when they were like, when as 2014, when women were first allowed into combat units, and they're like, there is not a single woman that has passed our school. And you're like, okay. So you look at the training models, magically crazy. The school, the Marine Corps school that no women were graduating from because they just can't
Yeah.
walk that fast and they just can't run that fast. Blah, blah, blah. They had changed all their standards into these grossly unachievable. They had upped all the standards, and then they bring women in because they're forced to. The Marine Corps was the last one that was gonna. I mean, they literally were forced to. They were refusing. They're like, I refuse because of it.
No
So
way.
so their response is, I'm gonna up all these standards. We're not gonna tell anybody we're upping all these standards and make everything harder, which was a change from the last like 20 years of that school, right? So they up
Wow.
all the standards, and their decision, like this is cray cray, right? Their decision was that they were more willing to accept a huge number of men failing because a huge number of men failed as well. You never hear about that. They were more willing to accept a huge number of men failing than to have one woman pass. Right. So,
Yeah.
so no, I mean, there was a gal. I remember this gal at West Point. She was a couple classes junior to me. Oh man, she was a beast. This gal, she would do, at the time it was push ups, sit ups, 2 mile run, right? She would do, it was like over 100 push ups, which is insane. Over
Yeah.
100 sit ups, like over 120 something sit ups. I mean, it was crazy. And then she
Wow.
would run a 12 something on the run, right?
Wow.
Which is faster than over 90 percentile of the entire male military population, right? I
Wow.
never even got, I think the fastest I ran was like 15. No, 15:01, 15:01. I was so pleased, right? But I mean, she was a freaking beast,
Wow.
and she was intelligent. She got into West Point. And you can't tell me she couldn't go out there and ruck and spit and cuss with the rest of those guys. She could do all of it. She probably walks
Oh,
around with some Copenhagen in her mouth. You go, girl.
you go, girl. That's right.
Ah,
That's
hell yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, no, I, I disagree with this idea that women can't can't hang. Some women
yeah.
cannot, some women can, and some men can't hang, and some men can. And the ones I think that every person should have the opportunity to compete for anything.
I
I
like that.
strongly believe that.
I like that. All right, we're going to move off to the speed round and wrap things up. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
This is supposed to be fun. All right,
Mhm.
what's one word you'd use to describe your leadership style?
Driven.
Ooh, like that. What's one habit that keeps you grounded?
Optimism.
Okay, that's a good one. Who is someone you admire for speaking truth to power?
Ryan. Ryan
Brian.
Swayze.
Ryan.
Ryan
Oh,
Swayze.
Ryan Swayze. Okay. Most underrated quality in a leader.
Humility.
Oh, I would agree with that. I like that one. What's a book that changed your life or worldview?
Consolation of Philosophy by Boethius.
Ooh, I don't know that one. I'm gonna have to
It's
look
written
that
in
one.
380 something. It's a pretty good book.
Constellation of Philosophy.
The Consolation of Philosophy
Oh, I love that.
by Boethius.
What's the bravest thing you've ever done that nobody saw?
Once I make a decision on something, I just do it. And or so the closest I can come, but I don't this isn't even right, is jumping out of airplanes, because I hate flying and I hate heights. And so jumping out of airplanes is just terrifying, but it's also exhilarating and fun and you can mess with people and it's a whole community, right?
Yeah,
And so yeah,
yeah.
I don't even it was my duty and so I did it. I don't know.
I
I have
did
no
it
idea.
once. It wasn't my duty, so that I would call that brave.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
might have been stupid at the time, but
I had the word stupid in my head. I've had people ask me like, "Hey, are you gonna go skydiving?" Hell no, I'm not skydiving. Why not? I jumped out of an airplane 31 times. I'm like, well, yeah, but I get paid to do that. That's my job. I'm gonna do that. That's stupid. That's just, you know. So I mean, I guess if you ask me, like I've done a lot of stupid things, but I can't think of
you
I
can't think of anything brave. I'm sure that you've done a lot of brave. I think the work you're doing now is very brave,
No,
actually.
thank you, I appreciate it. Yeah, no, I guess it's brave, but I don't know, I guess I don't think about it that way. I just think about
Yeah.
everything that I do, I just think about, you know, I do my normal obsessing about it up to a certain point, and then you just make a decision and you as Patton says, I think it was Patton, you go forward. Deal with the
Yeah.
consequences that you gotta deal
Yeah.
with.
He was pretty brave too, though.
He was. Well, I don't even know. I don't think he would I think he would reject
Really? Oh,
I think because you know, he was I mean, he was one of my admirals that's kind of fun, Agnes King. He was admiral in, World War II, became the chief of naval operations, and his career was on a downside up until World War II kicked off, or until Pearl Harbor attacked, and his career was on a downside because he was a bit of a wasn't a very easy to work for person, we'll say, and people did not like him. And then he was made chief of naval operations and he commented to Admiral Nimitz. He said, you know, something I'm paraphrasing slightly, but he said, "In war, you need the assholes." It's just like, yeah, it's true.
yeah. You do.
Go. Patton was not the easiest to work for either. But no, he was I mean, yeah, I think he would probably reject the idea of calling him brave, but I don't know. Maybe his ego could sustain that. My ego can't quite sustain that.
Well, I think you're brave. So, unfortunately, we have to wrap up. I've enjoyed this very much. But, Francesca, thank you for your courage, your service, and for doing the kind of work that most people don't even realize is happening until they need it. What you're fighting for isn't just policy change, it's dignity, it's protection, it's truth. And it's a reminder that real leadership doesn't always come with a title. Sometimes it comes with a cost. And to everyone listening, if today's episode moved you, challenged you, or taught you something new, share it with a friend who believes in standing up for what's right. And here's your joyful act for today. Reach out to someone who's been misunderstood and remind them that they're not alone. Because the truth is, people don't break when they're challenged. They break when they're isolated. If you love this episode, please follow or subscribe to Joy the Hang on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen, and leave a quick review. It helps this message travel farther than I ever could alone. I'm Sharon Stevenson, and until next time, honor the hang, protect the truth, and keep choosing connection. Thank you, Francesca.
Thank you so much, Sharon.